Forbes has released a rather very interesting insight report that tells you exactly how much the Indiana Fever's social media engagements are actually monetarily worth, either on X or YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, whatever. I mean, all these posts have a monetary value to them based on engagement.
The Indiana Fever social media just got valued at a staggering $55 million, and the craziest part, no one else is even remotely close. Forbes just dropped a report that has every critic, every doubter, every "it's not that serious" hater scrambling for explanations, because when the numbers hit the table, the debate ends instantly. While people spent months arguing about who really drives the WNBA, the data stepped in and delivered the verdict in the most ruthless way imaginable. So here's the question. Can one player truly be worth this much to a franchise's digital value? Drop your thoughts below, because what just happened is bigger than opinions. This is a full-blown reality check. This Forbes report is basically a nuclear bomb detonated right on top of every argument the old-school WNBA crowd has been clinging to. The Fever social media is officially valued at $55.04 million. And no, that's not a typo, not an exaggeration, not a rough estimate. That's what happens when you draft a player who doesn't just create interest, she changes the entire ecosystem of the league. The kind of star who moves the needle in ways the WNBA has never witnessed before.
If you are a Caitlin Clark fan, if you're an Indiana Fever fan, this is something you already know. However, for the haters out there, the old WNBA fandom, many of you call them the slows, for those fans, they're in complete denial. We've tried to tell people Caitlin Clark moves the needle unlike anybody else in this league or everybody else in this league. It just sort of is what it is. Fans are coming to see one particular player, and along with that, carries over the support to the entire team.
Now, before anyone starts whining that this is somehow disrespectful to other players or that we should be celebrating every team equally, let's get one thing straight. These are cold, hard numbers, and opinions, and bias, and fan agendas. This comes from a legitimate, data-driven study conducted by STN Digital and Zoom Analytics, two companies that tracked more than 20,000 pieces of content across Instagram, X, Facebook, and YouTube for the entire season. They measured impressions, engagement, and calculated exactly how much advertisers would have to pay to get the same amount of exposure through paid ads. And the results. The Fever didn't just finish first. They won by a margin so massive it's honestly embarrassing for everyone else in the league.
Posts are worth a lot of money. They are worth a lot of money, and I can tell you right now, that's a little over 5 times higher than the next WNBA team. 5 times higher. Let's go down here. Just scroll down. The Indiana Fever's staggering $55 million social media evaluation speaks volumes.
Second place went to the Dallas Wings at $8.61 million. And now take a moment and let that sink in. The gap between first and second place isn't a difference. It's a $46 million wipeout. That's not a race. That's not competition. That's not even the same playing field. The Fever aren't ahead. They're operating in an entirely different dimension, with numbers so outrageous nobody else can even get near them. And the crazy part? The Wings actually had a phenomenal year. Their engagement exploded 505%, their social value jumped 344%, and somehow they still got absolutely steamrolled by the gap. Third place went to the Las Vegas Aces at $7.64 million, which checks out. They're the dynasty with titles, stars, and national attention. Fourth place was the New York Liberty at $7.54 million, which also makes sense for the biggest media market in the country. But here's where things get really interesting. Fifth place. The Chicago Sky at $6.35 million. And now think back to all those debates. All the noise about who was bringing more attention to the league, who had the bigger cultural impact, which rookie was equally influential. Well, the numbers just shut that entire conversation down. And the answer wasn't remotely close. The Sky finished fifth despite having a player who was supposed to match that impact. But the social media valuation shows a $48.69 million difference between the Fever and the Sky. That's not a small gap. That's not a rounding error. That's not within range. That is a different stratosphere of reach, impact, and fan engagement. The type of difference that rewrites narratives and exposes the reality everyone has been arguing about for months.
Noticing the growing popularity of WNBA across social media, social agency STN Digital and analytics and measurement platform Zoom teamed up to quantify the league's online impact with a newly released WNBA social rankings and insight report. The research analyzes how every team performed across social media during the 2025 season and identifies which clubs and content pieces generated the most engagement, impressions, and estimated media value.
What makes these numbers even more ruthless is what happened after the season ended. The Fever didn't slow down, they didn't take a break. They didn't say, "All right, see you next year." No, they kept firing out Caitlin Clark content nonstop. They kept the engagement alive, kept the momentum rolling, and kept giving fans exactly what they showed up for. That's not luck. That's not coincidence. That's elite strategy. When you have a player who pulls this much attention, you don't ease off the gas. You press it harder. You feed the audience, you keep the machine running, and you ride that wave for as long as it'll take you. The study analyzed posts from May 16th to September 11th, and during that span, the Fever pulled in 38.73 million engagements, 1.17 billion impressions, and yes, billion. With a capital B, Tio put that in perspective. That's more impressions than many major professional sports franchises generate in an entire year across all platforms combined. And remember, this is the WNBA, a league that has spent decades fighting for mainstream attention and consistent media coverage. But one of the most jaw-dropping stats from the entire report is this. The Fever had a single YouTube video valued at $733, 594.1 video, not a series, not a campaign. Just one piece of content with nearly $750,000 in equivalent ad value. That's the kind of number that makes marketing executives lose sleep, because it proves how insanely locked in, engaged, and active this fan base truly is. One video, not a campaign, not a series, just one single piece of content. And it's valued at nearly $750,000 in equivalent advertising value. That's the kind of number that makes marketing executives lose their minds, because it proves just how engaged and active this fan base truly is. You don't hit those numbers unless people are watching, sharing, commenting, and coming back for more. Over and over. Tio put it in perspective. The value of that one video is higher than the entire social media worth of some WNBA teams for a full season. Think about that. One Fever post is worth more than everything some franchises posted combined. That's not just winning. That's dominating in a way that forces the entire league to rethink social media strategy and fan engagement moving forward. The methodology behind these numbers is key. They use something called the social value metric, which calculates what advertisers would have to pay to get the same exposure through paid media. So when we say the Fever social media is worth $55 million, that means if companies wanted to buy the same level of impressions and engagement through traditional advertising, it would cost them $55 million. And the Fever? They're generating that astronomical value organically, just by posting content their fans actually want to see. This also completely demolishes the argument that the WNBA's growth is evenly distributed or that multiple players are equally responsible for the surge in popularity. If that were true, the numbers across the top teams would be closer. Instead, you've got one team 5 times higher than second place. That's not exaggeration. That's not hype. That's one player dragging an entire franchise into relevance and pulling the whole league along for the ride, whether people want to admit it or not. The Dallas Wings' massive year-over-year growth is impressive and deserves recognition. A 505% spike in engagement is no small feat, and much of that is likely driven by Sophie Cunningham's social media presence and personality. She's consistently one of the most searched WNBA players and has even landed sponsorships with brands like Arby's. thanks to her knack for creating content fans actually want to engage with. But here's the reality. Even with that explosive growth, the Wings are still nowhere near the Fever's numbers. That's how far ahead Caitlin Clark's impact really is. And then there's the Chicago Sky, finishing 5th. That's probably the most shocking revelation for anyone who bought into the season-long narrative of two players being equally transformative. Media coverage painted them as rivals for the league's growth, but the social media valuation tells a completely different story, a gap of nearly $49 million. This isn't a close race. It's not even a competition. One player is creating engagement and value at a level no one else in the league can touch. Some might argue that the Fever social media team or content strategy is what's making the difference. Sure, there's some truth there. STN Digital collaborated with the Fever on campaigns that likely maximize their reach. But even the best content team in the world can't make content perform if the players themselves aren't compelling. The Fever's numbers are sky high because fans want Caitlin Clark content. Highlights, updates, behind-the-scenes footage, anything connected to her drives engagement. Demand fuels the supply, not the other way around. This report also underscores a truth the WNBA has been slow to fully embrace. Star power matters. The league has long promoted an egalitarian message that every player is equally important and deserving of attention. But that's not how fandom works. Fans connect with individual players, and the numbers here prove it beyond any doubt. Fans buy jerseys of specific athletes. They tune in to watch particular stars perform. The sooner the WNBA fully embraces that reality and centers its marketing around its biggest stars, the faster the league will grow. The Fever's social media value isn't just impressive numbers, it's a serious business asset. When you can show potential sponsors that your content reaches over 1 billion impressions and generates nearly 40 million engagements, you hold major leverage in every partnership conversation. Brands want engaged audiences, and the Fever have proven they can deliver at a scale no other WNBA team can match. That translates directly into revenue through sponsorships, advertising deals, and strategic partnerships. This also has huge implications for the Fever's future. When one player is responsible for generating this level of social media value, you do everything possible to keep them happy and on your roster. You build around them. You support them. You provide every resource they need to succeed, because losing them would be catastrophic for the franchise's bottom line.